joining us here in Seal Beach at River's End along one of the most beautiful and economically important coastlines in the country. And I want to just start by thanking the incredible leaders and advocates who are here with us today, including Grant Bixby from the Business Alliance for Protecting the Pacific, Jessica Walden from Surfrider Foundation. I forgot your name already, I'm sorry. Michaela Coates from Surfrider Foundation, and Aaron McCall from California Environmental Voters. Grateful for all the work you do, not just here today, but on a day-to-day basis in protecting our coast, our climate, and our communities. And we here in California know that our coastline is what makes this state special, certainly is what makes Orange County special. I talk to people from all over the state, and everyone in California has a beach that they kind of consider their own. It's not just something that we enjoy, it's part of our cultural DNA. It's where families come to walk and fish and swim and sunbathe and just spend time together. Our coastal economy is incredibly vibrant, supporting local businesses, tourism, recreations, and many thousands of jobs. Our coastline is central to our quality of life here in California. Now, we know that in 2024, when then candidate Donald Trump was running for office, he very publicly announced that if the fossil fuel industry gave him $1 billion, he would basically do whatever they wanted. And while they only gave him $200 million or so, he's a cheap date, he has since taken office the second time given a blank check to the fossil fuel industry, putting our coastal communities at risk. And we have seen firsthand here in Orange County what happens when we allow unlimited offshore oil drilling. Because what is happening right now across the state, and a lot of folks don't realize this, is that these oil rigs are aging. They were put in place in the 50s and 60s and 70s. The major oil companies that put those rigs in place that originally operated the leases have long since left. They've transferred those leases to smaller companies. The infrastructure is aging. There's not been any significant investments in that infrastructure, and you now have a bunch of wildcat, thinly capitalized companies operating these rigs, which leads to a ticking time bomb effect where we know that these rigs are going to have leaks and spills over time because there's no incentive for these companies to invest in the way that we need for them to actually make these safe. And so when we had the Amplify Energy oil spill off the coast of Huntington Beach in 2021, a classic example of that, the safety protocols that were in place failed. Nobody was alerted for well over 12 hours, and that oil spill became massive because the safety protocols had been neglected. And so President Trump's actions in trying to allow unlimited offshore drilling to re-establish new leases off here, not only going to exacerbate the climate crisis, but is going to lead to more and more oil spills in California. And that is why I'm proud to introduce a new legislative agenda supported by our community. And I want to just emphasize that support from our community. Because time after time, our communities here in Orange County, our state of California, has been asked to vote on whether we want new oil leases, whether we want a moratorium, whether we want to get rid of offshore drilling. And time again, the people of California, the people of Orange County have said no. Whether it's our surfers, our homeowners, local businesses, we don't want these offshore drills. And a very simple reason for that, our coastal economy is worth many, many billions of dollars. And every time there's an oil spill, it shuts down our beaches, it threatens our coastal economy for weeks, sometimes months, as with the Refugio oil spill a few years back. And so we want to just establish basic responsibility here. We want local control reestablished. And I just note that Donald Trump and his Republican allies in Congress talk a lot about local control and states' rights when they're in the minority. But now that they're in control, they are revving down offshore drilling off our coastlines, even though Californians have made clear time and time again, we don't want that. So what we're establishing with this legislative package is a very simple principle. If you make money drilling off our coast, you should be responsible for operating safely, following the law, and paying to clean up your own infrastructure. Not taxpayers, not local governments, not our beach communities, and not future generations. The oil companies should be responsible. The first bill on this agenda is the Offshore Leasing Standards and Accountability Act, which would establish strong fitness to operate standards for offshore oil and gas companies. Right now, we have a system that too often allows companies with poor safety records, weak financial capitalization, or a history of environmental violations to continue operating on our public waters. This legislation would require offshore oil and gas operators, including their parent and affiliate companies, to meet clear standards before they can receive, renew, extend, or transfer a lease on the outer continental shelf. It would prevent major oil companies from offloading aging offshore leases onto under-resourced wildcat operators that lack the expertise or financial capacity to safely manage these rigs. And of course, we saw the danger of the current system, as I mentioned a few years ago, with the Amplify oil spill just to the south of here in Huntington, off the coast of Huntington Beach. Right behind me you see, I think this is Emmy or Ellie behind us, a rig that is, again, a ticking time bomb operated by a small wildcat company. And as I often point out, I'd never heard of Amplify. I don't know anyone who had heard of Amplify Energy before that oil spill, and that's the problem right now. We have a bunch of wildcat companies nobody's heard of operating these rigs, and unfortunately that means that when there's drilling, we know there will be spilling off the coast of California. So this bill would give the Department of the Interior the authority to say no to risky lease transfers, no to operators that cannot prove that they can operate safely, and no to companies profiting off our coast without being able to clean up after themselves. This bill would also require operators to fully fund decommissioning costs through interest-bearing escrow accounts. That means that the money that we need to plug wells, to make these safe, to remove these platforms, and clean up the infrastructure they've left in place would be set aside before companies walk away, making sure that they were covering the costs of cleaning up after themselves, not taxpayers. It would place new limits on temporary well abandonment so operators cannot use delay tactics to avoid the hard and expensive work of proper cleanup. We've seen this playbook play out too many times before. Companies profit, then they declare bankruptcy, and then they try to just abandon their responsibilities when it's time to clean up their mess. Our bill here says clearly, if you drill, you must clean up. The second bill that I'm introducing is the Ending Fossil Fuels Bailout Act. This bill addresses another major loophole that I just mentioned that companies use to evade their responsibilities, and that is the path of bankruptcy. For too long, we've seen fossil fuel companies use the bankruptcy process to dodge environmental cleanup obligations. They treat oil wells, platforms, and other infrastructure as burdensome assets that they abandon while declaring bankruptcy, leaving communities, workers, and taxpayers left holding the bag. And that should not be allowed. The Ending Fossil Fuel Bailouts Act would reform the bankruptcy code to make clear that fossil fuel cleanup costs must be prioritized and cannot simply be wiped away in bankruptcy. It would close the loopholes that allow companies to abandon oil and gas infrastructure and prohibit the Department of the Interior from approving lease transfers to companies that have filed for bankruptcy. Because let's be honest, if a company doesn't have the financial resources to continue operating and is in danger of bankruptcy, it should not be taking on more offshore drilling obligations that fall on taxpayers. So we understand here in California that offshore drilling is a threat to our way of life, and we want to take this fight to Congress. This agenda is about basic accountability and common sense, making sure that offshore oil driller operators are financially and legally responsible before they drill, while they drill, and after they stop drilling. Because coastal communities like Seal Beach, where we are today, should not be forced to pay the price for corporate negligence. So today we're sending a very clear message. If offshore oil companies want to operate in our public waters, they must follow the law, prove they're financially capable, and pay for their own cleanup. No more blank checks, no more loopholes, no more fossil fuel bailouts. So I'm proud now to introduce our first speaker, Aaron McCall, a leader with California Environmental Voters, who works to advance environmental policies and mobilize public support for climate action across California. Thank you, Aaron.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron McCall, and I'm from California Environmental Voters. And I'm here to say that we are in support of Congressmember Min's offshore oil drilling accountability platform. It is a series of two different bills that address a problem that has been affecting Californians everywhere. First off, my home beach is Huntington Beach. Back in 2021, there was the offshore oil spill, which affected our community up and down the coast from Long Beach all the way down to like areas of Laguna Beach and San Diego. And it took weeks and weeks for that cleanup. And the people who were left responsible for that oil spill were the taxpayers. It was you. You had to pay for this oil spill as these corporations claimed bankruptcy and inability to take this on. This bill package is going to do something very simple, and that is keep corporate polluters accountable for the damages that they're doing to our ocean, to our environment, to our economy, and to our home. It is vital that we stand up and demand all of our members of Congress and the California delegation to support this bill package. It is vital that we hold corporations accountable, and it is vital that we protect our coastlines and stop this drilling. All of these oil spills are 100% predictable, and they're 100% preventable. All we have to do is hold them accountable. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Much, Aaron. Appreciate your comments. Next, pleased to welcome Grant Bixby, who serves as a leader with the Business Alliance for Protecting the Pacific and understands how important our coastal economy is.
Okay. Thank you, Congressman Min. BAPAC would like to thank Congressman Min for introducing this legislation, and we stand here in strong support of it. Oftentimes the narrative that is told, politically speaking, and that we hear in the media is that opposition to offshore oil is purely an environmental cause. And what I'm here to tell you is it's a much broader narrative than that. BAPAC represents over 8,250 businesses up and down the West Coast. These are entrepreneurs, these are mom and pop shops and restaurants, these are large retailers, major brands that are both international and national, as well as trade associations, fishing associations, realtors associations, visitors bureaus, chambers of commerce up and down the coast. And what our businesses have in common is an opposition to the expansion of offshore oil and gas drilling. We know this from experience. We've had 3 major spills in California, but there are hundreds of spills throughout the U.S. every day. We just had one 3 to 4 days ago that's spilling into the LA River, and there are about 2,000 gallons flowing out of a pipeline that they're trying to contain now. So we know that when you drill, you spill. We know based on the 2021 Huntington Beach spill that affected fisheries for months. It shut down the Pacific Air Show, where about 2 million people were in town for 3 days, and they all went home early. Restaurants emptied, hotels emptied. Jack's Surfboards has 9 locations. They sat on unsold inventory. My own clients in the residential real estate space, their vacation rental properties went vacant for months, and many of those people don't return. So there's a lingering effect that's harmful to our local economy. And if you poll Californians up and down the coast and even inland about offshore oil and gas, this is one of the most bipartisan issues across the state. Our coastal blue economy brings in over $54 billion per year to California. 1% of employment comes from offshore mineral resources in our marine economy. The other 99% is tourism and recreation, fishing, marine transportation, boat building, you name it. Should we sacrifice 99% of businesses and put those economies and their employees and their communities at risk to satisfy and perhaps grow the 1%? No. I think it's pretty simple math. So again, I want to thank Congressman Min for this legislation. And what can you do as a taxpayer? The federal government is about to release the next draft for their 5-year offshore oil drilling plan, and California is in the crosshairs. So please reach out to your representatives. It does not matter what party they're in. This is a bad business plan for California. Offshore oil is bad for business. Thank you.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to make some remarks today. Coastkeeper has been engaged in the offshore drilling issues since 2001. We've put on numerous all-day seminars and on decommissioning oil platforms, and we've successfully moved legislation in Sacramento to provide a pathway towards decommissioning of these oil platforms. But primarily today, I want to thank you, Congressman Min, for your efforts not only to make offshore oil operators more accountable, but to oppose any more oil production in California's most valuable resource, our coast. Prior to Dave's election to Congress, as a state senator, he was actively addressing these issues and authoring legislation to expedite termination of offshore oil leases. There's really 2 issues at play. How do we expedite the decommissioning of the remaining 24 or 27 oil platforms off California's coast? And how do we stop the current administration from opening our coast to more oil production? Those are the two major issues. The 27 platforms are at or nearing the end of their productive life. The cost of removing one is astronomical. The shallower ones, 700, 800 million. The deeper ones are way over $1 billion to remove one. And some of our oil platforms are 1,200 feet deep, and they're the largest marine structures in the world today. And so the equipment, the barges, how you would decommissioning the equipment doesn't even exist in the Western Hemisphere. And so it would be an incredible undertaking to remove these. In the event an operator abandons an oil platform, and one recently has, it falls on the state of California and the taxpayers to pay for the decommissioning and removal of these oil platforms. And one of our fears is we're going to see more of that. California has experienced numerous oil spills, which have been catastrophic to marine life, our coastline, and to the economy that operates and depends on a healthy ocean and healthy marine habitats. The last thing we need to do is open our coast to more oil production. The potential of damage is not worth the small amount of oil, as said earlier, 1%, that is produced from California's offshore source. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those remarks, Gary. Last but not least, we have our representative from Surfrider, Dr. Jessica Walden, who I had the pleasure of meeting a few years ago when she was getting her PhD from UC Irvine in Earth System Sciences. Thank you very much for being here.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Jessica Walden with Surfrider Foundation, and if you're not already familiar, Surfrider is a grassroots organization dedicated to the protection and enjoyment of the world's ocean, waves, and beaches for all people through a powerful activist network. Our Southern California chapters are made up of dedicated volunteers who carry out beach cleanups, water testing, habitat restoration, and grassroots campaigns to protect our coasts. As an environmental scientist and lifelong ocean lover, I've always been able to rely on Surfrider to harness the power of community and science to generate change through local initiatives and legislative support. As a young girl, my affection for the ocean grew through time spent as a junior lifeguard in Newport Beach. Before we could leave at the end of each day, we had to pick up 3 pieces of trash from the sand, and so began my passion for environmental protection. I attended Surfrider meetings in high school and was inspired to join hundreds of volunteers in Sacramento to speak with our congressmen and representatives about important environmental issues. As a PhD student at UC Irvine, I studied the impacts of plastic, which is a product of oil, on ocean ecosystems. And now I bring my scientific knowledge and my passion for the ocean into my role on the Executive Committee for North Orange County chapter of Surfrider. After the oil spill here in 2021, it was up to Surfrider and other local nonprofits to provide resources for volunteers and the local community to aid in response efforts. The foundation was appointed as the NGO liaison to government agencies involved in emergency response and worked to ensure that dangerous dispersants that can compound the problem were not used. This spill, like all others, caused devastating impacts to communities, business, wildlife, and their habitat. That's why we're here to show support for Congressman Min's new legislation to hold the oil and gas industry accountable for their actions. We especially want to highlight our support of the Offshore Leasing Standards and Accountability Act. This important bill will help ensure that the aging oil and gas platforms off of the California coast are decommissioned in a safe and timely manner to minimize impacts on human health and the environment. Specifically, it will close loopholes that the industry has been using for decades to evade their decommissioning responsibilities. This legislation will protect our coastal ecosystems and wildlife that deserve care, but it will also protect California's recreation and tourism-based economy that depends on a clean and healthy coastal environment. We call upon Congress to pass these bills to protect our nation's public resources, and to hold the oil and gas industry accountable. Our world-class beaches and coastlines belong to the people of California, not to multinational for-profit corporations. Thank you.